Ada, a lazy lady, who loves eating outside because she is too lazy to cook. One day after eating in a restaurant, Ada, who was very pressed after she finished eating her food and urgently needed to ease herself. So she asked the waitress where the restroom was located and she was directed to the restroom. However, when she got there, it was already occupied by another customer and Ada couldn't hold it any longer. She saw a swinging door which led to the kitchen. When she peeped through the swinging door, she couldn't make much sense of what she saw, so she went through the door into the kitchen, and what she saw shocked her to the bone. It made her want to vomit. Everything was very dirty and irritating. There were a lot of dirty dishes piled up beside the cooking area. Raw meat was left out in the open with a dozen of flies patching on it. The women who were cooking the food had dirty hair and their white clothes were stained with all sort of things. It looked as if it hadn't been washed for a long time. The whole floor was dirty and filthy, and there were rats roaming freely all around. Then Ada saw the chief cook, a very fat dark woman, wearing a sleeveless gown. Her teeth were very brown, and the hair on her armpit were bushy and disgusting. Ada watched as the fat woman scratched her dirty armpit with the spoon she was using to cook and still used the same spoon to stir the soup without washing it. Ada felt very disgusted and she almost wanted to throw up. She held her stomach with one hand and used the other hand to cover her nose and mouth. Because of the smell, and the smell in the kitchen was very bad, she went back inside the restaurant feeling disappointed and irritated at the same time. When she left the restaurant, she rushed outside to vomit all that she had eaten. She couldn't believe what she just witnessed. Hello friends, welcome to African Tales Retold. Please subscribe to this channel and share the stories to others. By the way, to enable subtitles or captions, look for the CC icon on the video player. It will be located in the top right corner where subtitles are available. Now let's dive into the story. Ada's blog post about her experience continues to gain traction online, drawing attention from people across the country. She receives messages from individuals who share similar stories about encountering unsanitary practices in restaurants, as well as messages of support and gratitude from readers who appreciate her courage in speaking out. Ada begins to feel a sense of responsibility to use her platform to promote awareness about health and hygiene in public eateries. Encouraged by the positive response, Ada decides to go further. She starts researching food safety standards, hygiene practices, and the rights of consumers. The more she learns, the more passionate she becomes. She realizes that there are countless others who have likely suffered in silence, and she's determined to make a change. One day, she gets a message from a local journalist who came across her blog. He expresses interest in interviewing her for a segment about food safety awareness in the city. Ada hesitates, nervous about the idea of going public, but ultimately agrees. She knows that by sharing her story on a larger platform, she can reach more people and help prevent others from experiencing what she did. With Ada preparing for her first television interview, her mind racing with anticipation and excitement, knowing that her journey is only beginning. Ada arrives at the television studio, her palms sweating as she's escorted to a small waiting room. She takes deep breaths, trying to calm her nerves as she prepares to tell her story in front of a much larger audience. When her turn comes, she's led onto the set and introduced to the host, who greets her warmly. The interview begins with Ada recounting her experience at the restaurant, sharing every shocking detail she remembers. She speaks about the kitchen's filth, the rats, the carelessness of the staff, and the trauma that haunted her afterward. As she speaks, she notices the host and crew's reactions, shocked expressions, furrowed brows, and even some gasps. She feels a sense of validation, realizing that her experience is opening people's eyes to a problem that's often ignored. The host then asks Ada what steps consumers can take to protect themselves. Drawing on her recent research, Ada shares practical advice on identifying signs of cleanliness, checking for health certifications, and being cautious with restaurants that seem unhygienic. She encourages viewers to be vocal about any concerns and to report unsanitary practices to local authorities. With Ada leaving the studio, feeling proud and empowered. Her interview airs that evening, reaching thousands of viewers and cementing her role as an advocate for food safety. Ada's interview sparks a wave of reactions. Her social media accounts are flooded with messages from strangers who saw the segment, many of whom commend her for her bravery. Some people even share their own horror stories of eating out, and Ada realizes just how widespread the issue is. A few days after the interview, Ada receives an invitation from a consumer advocacy group in Lagos. They're hosting an event focused on public health awareness and want her to speak as a guest panelist. Ada is both thrilled and nervous. Public speaking has never been her strength, but she's motivated by the impact her story has had so far. As the event approaches, Ada spends hours preparing her speech, determined to make a strong case for stricter food safety regulations. She practices in front of her mirror, perfecting her points and building her confidence. By the time the day of the event arrives, she feels ready to take on this new challenge. Ada standing backstage at the event, listening to the applause of the crowd as the previous speaker finishes, waiting for her turn to share her story with an even larger audience. When Ada steps onto the stage, the bright lights momentarily blind her, and she feels a rush of nervousness. But as she begins to speak, her anxiety fades, replaced by a deep passion for the cause. She tells the audience about her experience, the lasting impact it had on her, and the importance of advocating for clean, safe dining environments. She talks about her journey from a lazy diner to an informed consumer, encouraging others to be mindful and proactive. She speaks with conviction, emphasizing that everyone has the right to safe, sanitary food and urging the audience to hold establishments accountable. The audience is captivated, hanging on to every word. When she finishes, they erupt into applause, and Ada feels an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. After the panel, people approach her, thanking her for her bravery and asking for advice on how they too can advocate for safer dining practices. With Ada leaving the event, a new sense of purpose blossoming within her as she realizes that her story has the power to inspire real change. After the event, Ada begins collaborating with the consumer advocacy group, working with them to promote food safety awareness. She participates in educational campaigns, writes articles, and even helps design flyers that inform people about the importance of choosing clean, reputable restaurants. Her life has transformed in ways she never expected, and she finds herself energized by the work. As her advocacy efforts grow, Ada becomes a well-known figure in the food safety community. She receives invitations to speak at schools, community centers, and even local government meetings, where she shares her story and stresses the importance of stricter health regulations. One day, Ada is contacted by a representative from the health department, who thanks her for her work and invites her to collaborate on a project aimed at improving hygiene inspections for restaurants across the city. Thrilled by the opportunity to make an even greater impact, Ada agrees, feeling as though her nightmare experience has given her a new purpose in life. With Ada reflecting on how far she's come, from a traumatized diner to an advocate for change, realizing that her painful experience was the catalyst for a mission much greater than herself. As Ada delves deeper into her advocacy work, she becomes aware of how much there still is to be done. She uncovers stories of restaurants that bribe inspectors, loopholes in health regulations, and a general lack of awareness among consumers about their rights. Determined to bring about real change, she vows to continue her fight for food safety, knowing it's a long and challenging journey. Despite her progress, Ada knows she's only scratched the surface. She dreams of one day establishing a foundation dedicated to educating the public and supporting stricter health regulations. She envisions a future where people no longer have to worry about the cleanliness of their food and where businesses are held accountable for maintaining proper hygiene. With Ada receiving a mysterious letter from an anonymous source claiming to have inside information on one of the biggest restaurant chains in the city, a chain that allegedly violates health regulations on a large scale. The letter warns her that pursuing this information could be dangerous, but Ada feels a surge of determination, knowing that this might be her biggest fight yet. Ada holds the letter in her trembling hands, rereading its ominous message. The letter doesn't reveal much, just a few cryptic lines warning her of health violations within a popular restaurant chain. It hints at employees being forced to overlook hygiene protocols, and it warns her that looking into it could be dangerous. Initially, Ada considers dismissing the letter. She's already been through enough and isn't sure she wants to dig up more trouble. But as she lies awake that night, her mind won't stop racing. She recalls the horrors she witnessed in the kitchen of that first restaurant and imagines how many others might unknowingly be exposed to similar risks. She realizes that if there's a chance this chain is putting customers at risk, she can't ignore it. With Ada deciding to investigate further, determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Ada begins her investigation by researching the chain mentioned in the letter. She discovers that it's one of the largest and most popular fast food chains in the city, with branches in nearly every neighborhood. Known for its affordability and convenience, it's a favorite spot for students, workers, and families. However, Ada also notices some troubling online reviews scattered among the positive ones. A few people mention experiencing food poisoning after dining there, while others complain about the cleanliness of specific branches. Determined to get concrete evidence, Ada decides to visit a few locations herself. She takes careful notes, observing each restaurant's cleanliness, the behavior of the staff, and the general atmosphere. At one branch, she notices an unpleasant smell lingering near the kitchen door. At another, she sees a waiter drop a piece of bread on the floor, only to pick it up and place it back on the serving tray. These observations fuel her suspicions, but she knows she needs something stronger if she wants to expose the chain. With Ada feeling both anxious and invigorated, aware that she's on the verge of uncovering something big. Ada realizes she can't do this alone, especially if there's a risk involved. She decides to reach out to a journalist she met during her first interview, a man named Jide who had shown a genuine interest in her story. She sends him an email detailing the anonymous letter and her initial observations, explaining her suspicions about the restaurant chain. To her relief, Jide responds quickly, agreeing to meet in a quiet cafe where they can talk without drawing attention. Over coffee, Ada shares everything she's uncovered so far. Jide listens carefully, his expression growing more serious as she describes the unsanitary practices she's witnessed. "Let's work together on this," he says after a moment of thought. "I can use my contacts to dig deeper, and we can gather evidence that the public won't be able to ignore." Ada feels a sense of relief and gratitude, knowing she now has someone in her corner. With Ada and Jide shaking hands, a partnership formed to take down an industry giant. To get a first-hand look at the chain's kitchen practices, Ada and Jide come up with a daring plan. Ada will apply for a temporary job at one of the chain's branches. That way, she can observe the staff and management closely, noting any health violations or unsanitary practices from within. Ada feels a surge of excitement mixed with nervousness as she prepares for her undercover role. She applies at a location known for being especially busy, hoping that the pressure will reveal any hidden issues. After a quick interview, she's hired as a part-time kitchen assistant, a role that allows her access to the inner workings of the restaurant. On her first day, Ada quickly notices small red flags. Some of the ingredients are stored improperly, with vegetables piled near raw meat, increasing the risk of contamination. She also notices that some of the employees don't wear gloves while handling food, and one of the cooks coughs without covering his mouth before touching a stack of plates. Ada takes mental notes, carefully cataloging each violation. With her feeling both horrified and determined, realizing just how deep the issues run within the restaurant chain. Over the next few days, Ada documents as much as she can. She sneaks her phone into the kitchen, snapping discreet photos of unsanitary practices and making quick notes during her breaks. The scenes she captures are worse than she anticipated: spoiled meat being repackaged, food dropped on the floor and served to customers, and an absolute disregard for cleanliness. Ada also overhears troubling conversations between the manager and staff. One day, the manager scolds a worker for using too many cleaning supplies, warning him to cut costs wherever possible. It becomes clear to Ada that the company prioritizes profit over customer safety, willing to compromise on basic hygiene to save money. Feeling nauseated by what she's witnessed, Ada realizes the gravity of her mission. She shares her findings with Jide, who is equally appalled and begins preparing an exposé to reveal the chain's hidden practices. With Ada and Jide planning their next steps, their resolve stronger than ever. One evening, as Ada is leaving work, a man approaches her in the parking lot. He's wearing a dark suit, his face stern and unreadable. Without introducing himself, he hands her an envelope and says, "Be careful, Ms. Ada. Some people don't appreciate others digging into their business." Before she can respond, he walks away, disappearing into the shadows. Ada feels a cold chill run down her spine as she opens the envelope. Inside, there's a short, typed note: "Stop now, or face the consequences." Shaken, Ada realizes that the restaurant chain must have caught wind of her investigation. She debates whether to continue or walk away, but after a moment's thought, her determination only grows stronger. She knows that backing down would mean letting the chain continue its dangerous practices unchecked. With Ada crumpling the note in her hand, a look of fierce resolve on her face as she decides to press forward, no matter the risks. Ada and Jide decide to escalate their efforts, knowing time is of the essence. Jide begins preparing the exposé, incorporating Ada's evidence and testimonies from former employees willing to speak out anonymously. They plan to release the article in a reputable publication, hoping that the public outcry will force authorities to take action. Just as they're about to publish, Ada receives a call from one of her old friends who works in the restaurant industry. He warns her that someone within the company has leaked information about her investigation, and that the chain's legal team is preparing to discredit her, claiming her evidence is fabricated. Ada feels a surge of anger but quickly formulates a plan. She and Jide decide to move up their timeline, releasing the article sooner than planned to prevent the company from getting ahead of the story. With Jide hitting publish on the exposé, and Ada bracing herself for the storm she knows will follow. Within hours of the article's publication, it goes viral. The public is outraged by the blatant disregard for health and safety that the exposé reveals. Social media erupts with comments, calls for boycotts, and demands for stricter health regulations. News channels pick up the story, with journalists echoing the shocking details of Ada's findings and exposing the company's negligence. The restaurant chain responds by denying the allegations, claiming that the exposé is a smear campaign based on fabricated evidence. They threaten legal action against both Ada and Jide, accusing them of defamation. Despite the chain's efforts to undermine her credibility, Ada receives overwhelming support from the public. Former employees of the chain come forward with their own stories, corroborating Ada's findings and sharing additional details of the company's unsanitary practices. With Ada feeling a renewed sense of purpose, realizing that the public support means she's not alone in this fight. Following the public outcry, local health authorities launch an investigation into the restaurant chain. Inspectors visit several branches, conducting thorough checks and interviewing employees. The investigation confirms many of the unsanitary practices Ada exposed, including improper food storage, inadequate cleaning, and a lack of hygiene protocols. The health department issues a temporary shutdown order for multiple locations, pending a full compliance review. The restaurant chain's reputation is severely damaged, and they are forced to publicly apologize and commit to implementing stricter health standards. Ada watches the news coverage with a mixture of relief and pride, knowing that her efforts have made a difference. She feels a sense of closure, having achieved the justice she sought for herself and countless others. With Ada celebrating quietly with Jide, both of them reflecting on the impact of their work and the lives they've potentially saved. With her mission against the restaurant chain complete, Ada's life takes on a new purpose. She's approached by a health and safety organization, offering her a role as an advocate and spokesperson for food safety awareness. They encourage her to use her story to continue inspiring change across the industry. As Ada considers the offer, she receives a mysterious email from another anonymous sender. The message hints at more restaurant chains operating with similar unsanitary practices and suggests that Ada's work is far from over. Intrigued, Ada feels a spark of excitement, realizing that her journey might just be beginning. The email lingers in Ada's mind, its message haunting her. She reads it over and over, trying to make sense of the cryptic hints. The sender seems to know details about other chains operating with poor hygiene standards, but they're vague, leaving Ada with more questions than answers. She contemplates reaching out to the mysterious sender, but something holds her back, a feeling of caution, or perhaps a fear that this investigation will spiral out of control again. After all, her life had only just begun to settle. The chaos of the past weeks had finally calmed down, and she'd begun to find peace. But the idea of leaving other people in danger gnaws at her. If these other restaurants are truly operating under unsafe conditions, she can't simply ignore it. After discussing it with Jide, she decides to cautiously pursue the lead, hoping to uncover more information. With Ada responding to the anonymous email, agreeing to meet the sender in a public place to learn more. Ada waits anxiously at a bustling cafe, watching every person who walks in. Eventually, a man in his early 40s, dressed in a simple shirt and jeans, approaches her table. He introduces himself as Obina, a former health inspector who claims he was silenced by higher-ups when he tried to report the unsanitary practices of several restaurant chains. Obina explains that many chains in the city cut corners to maximize profits, and those who attempt to expose them are often threatened or paid off. He admits he's terrified to speak out but feels a moral obligation to help Ada after seeing the impact of her first investigation. Obina hands her a stack of documents detailing inspection reports that were altered or ignored. He warns Ada that if she pursues this, it won't be easy. These chains have powerful backers, and the consequences could be severe. With Ada holding the documents, her mind racing as she realizes the scale of the corruption she's about to uncover. As Ada pores over the documents that night, she's faced with a difficult decision. The documents reveal damning evidence of bribery, negligence, and dangerous shortcuts taken by multiple restaurant chains. Some of the violations are so severe that she can hardly believe they haven't been exposed before. Ada knows that if she chooses to pursue this, she'll likely face even stronger resistance than before. Yet, despite the risks, she feels a growing sense of responsibility. Her conscience won't allow her to walk away, not when she holds the power to prevent more harm. After another meeting with Jide, they both agree to push forward, aware of the risks, but motivated by their sense of duty. With Ada and Jide planning their next steps, ready to take on this new, dangerous challenge. As Ada and Jide start investigating, they notice a shift in the people around them. Some of Ada's friends begin distancing themselves, worried that being associated with her might put them at risk. Jide even receives a call from a close friend who warns him to let this one go, if he values his career. They begin to realize the immense power these corporations wield and the fear they instill in others. Ada finds herself questioning her own strength. This time, she's not just up against unsanitary kitchens, she's challenging an entire system. With Ada experiencing a moment of self-doubt, questioning whether she has the courage to see this through. While continuing her investigation, Ada receives an unexpected call from someone within one of the implicated companies, a young employee named Kemi who works in the quality control department. Kemi, disillusioned with her role in helping cover up violations, offers Ada information in exchange for anonymity. Kemi describes how she's been instructed to ignore violations and keep records clean. She agrees to send Ada copies of emails and memos that reveal the chain's disregard for health protocols. With Ada feeling a spark of hope. With Kemi's help, she finally has access to direct insider information that could blow the case wide open. As Ada and Jide continue to gather evidence, they start receiving anonymous threats. One night, Ada returns home to find a threatening note slipped under her door, "Mind your business if you know what's good for you." Undeterred, she presses forward, but the sense of danger grows. Each day brings new obstacles, and each new threat reminds her of the high stakes. Jide, too, finds himself growing anxious, but the two of them are determined to finish what they started. With a shadowy figure watching from across the street as Ada enters her apartment, foreshadowing the increased intensity of the conflict ahead. Jide decides to leak a teaser of their findings to the media to build public awareness and support. He publishes a brief article hinting at massive corruption within the restaurant industry, igniting public curiosity and stirring up controversy. The story goes viral almost immediately, sparking outrage on social media and news outlets. People demand answers, pressuring the implicated chains to address the accusations. With Ada watching the media frenzy unfold, feeling a mixture of triumph and trepidation, aware that the publicity might make her an even bigger target. As the media uproar intensifies, the restaurant chains launch a brutal campaign to discredit Ada and Jide. They paint Ada as a disgruntled, wannabe journalist seeking fame, and rumors start circulating about her supposed vendetta against the industry. Ada finds herself under immense scrutiny, with reporters hounding her for comments and strangers recognizing her in public. Despite the stress, she refuses to back down, but the relentless attacks take a toll on her. With Ada on the verge of exhaustion, wondering if her resilience will be enough to carry her through. Just as Ada reaches her breaking point, she receives a surprising call from an influential figure, a popular activist and public figure named Nneka who advocates for consumer rights. Nneka offers her support, bringing her considerable influence to Ada's cause. With Nneka's backing, Ada and Jide gain newfound strength. They decide to push harder, knowing they now have someone in their corner with the power to counter the restaurant chain's propaganda. With Ada feeling a surge of hope, ready to press forward with renewed determination. Late one night, Ada receives a chilling call from an anonymous number. The voice on the other end warns her that she's made enough enemies, and that she's playing with fire. Before hanging up, the caller tells her that if she values her life, she should abandon her mission and disappear. Shaken, Ada realizes that the threats she's been receiving are not empty. This final warning is different. It feels more personal, more intense, as if someone powerful is truly willing to go to any lengths to silence her. With Ada alone in her apartment, staring at her phone, contemplating the weight of the choice before her. Will she continue her fight for justice, or will the fear finally drive her to give up?